Welcome to the Born for Greatness podcast. Today, I have special guest Portia Louder. She is a phenomenal woman and author of the book Living Louder. Portia, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Rebecca.
Absolutely. I don't even know where to start. I know that I just started your book and it's incredible, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Do you want the 5-minute or the 2-minute or the 10-minute version?
Let's start with the 5-minute, right in between.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I live in Utah. I was born here. I'm the oldest of 7 children. My parents were really non-traditional kind of, I call them hippies, like back in the day. And so anyway, my younger years, by the time I was 13, I just started struggling with, I guess my first problem was with relationships. And I think looking back, I can see I just didn't know who I was, right? So it was like, I've got to find a guy, I need a man, somebody else to validate who I am. And that led to, I was pregnant with my first child by the time I was 17. And so I spent my younger years in and out of relationships, even after that. And eventually in my 20s, I started, things got worse before they got better. I got addicted to prescription drugs, and that led to a bottom that, that turned things around for me. You know, I think people often think that going through hard things is just, the worst thing, but I really do feel like it's been the most painful experiences of my life that have given me the most clarity and the most strength to move forward. It's like you build a new life on the foundation of pain, that you experience. And so, so in my 20s, I had 2 children. I was a single mom and I was addicted. And that is where I found the strength to change. And I started, doing the basic things. I started meditating, I started praying, I got involved in a community program that helped me, and I got back on my feet. And it took a while for me to start feeling like a decent person again, or feeling free, I should say, because addiction is just bondage. And so, and then I wasn't looking. I had kind of sworn off relationships. I was like, I just got to figure out who I am. And ended up meeting my husband, who had just graduated college. He didn't have any of the chaos in his life that I did, but we just had this connection, and we got married, and he adopted my kids. And so like, I would love to tell you that that's where it ended. And it was like, actually, I probably wouldn't, but at the time, like sometimes when I tell the story, I feel like, oh, people are like cheering you on, excited, she made it. And then things get hard again. We bought a little house. I started my own company, and life was going good for us. Like, I truly remember waking up every day just feeling so grateful, because I had been on the other side of that. And I knew how fortunate I was just to be getting my kids off to school and running a company, and my marriage was going well. And for me, it just got to where I was so busy that I quit doing those things that I was doing for myself that were working. And then I had a back surgery. Chad and I had our first child together, and it threw my back out, and I ended up relapsing on prescription drugs. So what I know about me is that I can't, like, the second that I use those drugs, like, they trick me into thinking that everything's okay. It's just like this deception. My brain just plays tricks on me. And so I continued to, rather than just like get honest with myself or my husband, I just started making excuses and hiding it. And eventually I got involved in, it's not just drugs for me, it's also hustle. Like, I like to hustle. That's what I know that about myself now, And so, and I think self-awareness just gives you the ability to move in a different direction. And so,
absolutely.
But at that point, I wasn't honest with myself, and I got involved in these illegal real estate deals. And it was in the 2005 to 2008 range when the market was just going up, up, up.
Yeah.
And I totally remember the first time, I was buying lots and flipping lots, and the first time someone presented this deal where you buy a house and you pull the cash out and you borrow more on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I would never get involved in those. And then like 6 months later, I'm totally in the thick of those deals. And, nobody wants the FBI to show up at their house. Like I had no
No,
idea. It's just terrifying, really. It's like,
I can't imagine.
you're like, go away, don't come
Right?
in. Not here, not me. And I really just wanted
Yeah.
to like beg them and say, I work too hard. Please just go away. Like, how is my marriage and my children? How would we survive me going to prison? I couldn't,
Yeah.
it's just too scary. And I think, I look back at my life before this experience and I was so worried about what people thought and less worried about who I really was.
Mm.
Because, I can see that shift in my life now. And now it's like all about how I feel about myself and not so much about what other people think. And that's like total freedom and power in my life.
Yeah.
I just handled it as bad as you could. I didn't get honest with myself. I didn't say, hey, I made a mistake. How can we move forward? It was like,
Right.
what about them? Everyone else is doing the same thing. Excuses. There's
Mm-hmm.
no power in any of that. So I was just weak. And eventually I just walked into a courtroom anyway. And I don't even think there's words to describe how it feels to stand in a courtroom unless you've been there. It's honestly one of the most lonely places on earth. It's a day of reckoning. It's like the
Yeah.
United States of America versus Portia Louder. And I'm thinking, my whole country's against me. Like you just feel that.
Oh, so true. Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
That's
And
heavy.
it was super heavy. And you know, I feel like a piece of me died that day, but
Mm.
I also feel like something was born that was so much stronger and braver. But at that point, I didn't know all I knew was that I was standing there. They sentenced me to 7 years, and I probably deserved it because I handled everything as bad as you could. Like if I could have worked with them or owned
Right.
my place, it would have gone different. But I just looked back at my husband, and my youngest daughter was 7 years old, and I thought, how am I ever going to leave her for
Mm.
7 years? Like it just, I was having a hard time making sense of it. And, and then I walked out, and my life has never looked the same. Like on the way home I got 8 weeks to say goodbye to my family and go to prison. And on my way home, I looked around and I thought, how could I have been so foolish? Like, how could
Mm.
I have seen the world? Like it just shifted. What I thought
Right.
before and after was so different. And how could I have thought that money mattered at all? It just was so,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
unimportant. So
Yeah. But it's such a trap that I mean, I think most of us fall into it at some point in our lives.
yeah,
Because you see the world around you and what other people have, and right, as humans, we want what others have, and
yeah,
you don't always necessarily see the struggle that is behind um, money and finances. So,
yeah. Well, I realized when I got to prison that nothing material mattered. Like I never missed
mm,
a steak or nice clothes or vacations. All I missed were the simple moments with my children, the things that I had that I gave up because I was too busy. Like I was too busy to notice that driving my son to school was beautiful, or
mm,
you know, walking with my little one to the mailbox to put mail in. I mean, all those little things,
right,
that's what I missed. And I was like,
yeah,
I felt burned. I felt burned by money and by drugs and by all of it. I thought, I will never place value on that again. Like it just, when I came home, I was determined to live a simple life and to appreciate every moment that I miss. And I guess it took It took me a couple of years in prison. Prison's nothing like, at least for me, it was nothing like you see on TV. It
Mm-hmm.
was a whole lot of women who were broken, who had been through the hardest things in life, who were rising above it. And they were
Mm.
kind and compassionate. And we just helped each other through the hardest moments. And so that was a
Oh,
shock
wow.
to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah, it's not how
was.
it's portrayed, obviously, at all.
No, I get
So
so annoyed when I see it. I'm
I'm
like,
sure
no,
you do. Oh,
because
wow.
it's
That's
not.
very
And
interesting.
yeah, I met women from all walks of life that just had the most difficult circumstances, that were trying to overcome generations of drug abuse and other things,
Mm,
that I was like, whoa. I think I think that the most beautiful part of it was that I had the time to come to know myself. And I was in a lot of pain, being
I'm
separated.
sure.
Oh, there were times where I just sat outside for days under a tree, because we had a rec yard there, and
Mm-hmm.
I just was in a lot of pain. And I really had to sit with it
Mm,
and get to a place where I could own my part of what happened. I felt victimized, which was, I felt like the government did me dirty. How could they do
right.
this? I think my kids came out to visit me, and I could see that my kids were struggling, which was so painful, you know. And
Yeah.
oh, my son Jackson, he felt angry. And I asked him, I said, does anyone
Mm-hmm.
ever talk to you about this? And he's like, no one would dare talk to me about this, Mom. And I looked at him and I said, Jackson, this isn't the government's fault. This isn't your teacher's fault. This isn't our neighbor's fault. This is 100% my fault. You should be angry at me. Tell me how I hurt you, please. Like, it was like, I can't have him growing up thinking that
Right.
that he's a victim, or that I'm a victim, because there's there's no way that he's going to move past this if that's the case.
Yeah,
And
so
so
true.
I kind of got to this place where I decided to make a total spreadsheet of everything I'd ever done to hurt anyone. like a,
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh. I love spreadsheets. I never thought to do that myself. Like,
well,
oh, that's
it
awesome.
was kind of it was an inventory. I actually saw a girl do it. She got up in front of this group of women and she just laid out. She's like, I'm here 100% because of the people I've hurt and the things I've done. And she just shared this really thorough list. And I thought I could just feel the power in the room when she did that. And I
Mm,
decided that I wanted to get honest, and I wanted the kind of
yeah,
freedom that would bring to just own it.
absolutely. Yeah.
It is the most powerful thing, because once you say I did this, you have the
Mm-hmm.
power to decide to do something different. So
Mm,
I really feel like ownership is what we miss a lot in society. It's like, just
yeah.
own it and move on.
So true. Yeah.
So that was powerful. My last 2 years, I was able to start dreaming again. I started getting excited about my future, and I didn't know what it would look like, but I knew that if I had the power to get where I was, I had the power to get somewhere else. Like, I made these choices,
Love
and
it.
yeah, it was, by the end of my sentence, I was like, enjoyed the connection that we shared, the sun on my face, the simplicity of my
Mm,
life. I had gone inward and found parts of me that I didn't know. And I felt like I don't want to lose what I have, which
right.
is weird, but
Yeah.
it was like, geez, I love the simplicity and the beauty and my gratitude for life and freedom that I feel. How do I take that with me out there? And I think I wrote my book out of just my heart being so full that I needed to
Mm,
just express it. And I just started on a new book because the same thing happened. I was like, oh, I just feel like I've had all these other beautiful
aw,
experiences since I got home. I'm like, I just have to share it. So it's
that's
been pretty
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
That
So
is so amazing. I have so many questions,
it's a
but let's
lot
go.
longer than 5 minutes. Sorry.
No, no,
So,
It's so important. And it's such a beautiful story of like rising up from a situation that you could have completely gone the other way. And just, I mean, bravo to you, because I can't even imagine the amount of strength that that took to own it and to live your life differently moving forward. So, congratulations to you for doing that. However, let's go back. So I actually think you're the first female guest I've had on, which is so awesome, because there's like all these things like, right, that only as women we can talk about. I mean, obviously men struggle with validation too, but we're going to talk on the female side. I think that's such a commonplace, especially in those preteen years. And I don't know what it is, in the sense that we feel like we have to get our validation and our worth from men who don't know how to handle a woman's worth or value, or young girls at that point in time. I mean, what do you think do you think it was a product of your environment that made you feel that way? Do you think it's society as a whole? What's your thought on that?
Well, I've got a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
So as I'm looking back at my life, I'm like, what was it? And I
Right.
think that, and this is what I've come to, and as I'm writing this new book, it's like, I had this amazing mother. I mean, she really was amazing, talented, and she was a photographer. She was an actress. She could write. She was just quirky, but so talented. And she never, ever knew how amazing she was. It was like, you can't give something to your kids that you don't have. And so like, for me, I've gotten to this place where I really do feel like the most important thing for me to do is take care of myself. Like, I feel like, because not just for me, but for my kids, it's like, I love you, but I have to be a whole person who knows who I am, or I can't be your guide. We try to do things for our kids. That's not what they need. They need to see us do things for ourselves. And so, if I just think that my mom told us how amazing we were, she loved us, she believed in us, but she didn't know how amazing she was. How do you give something to your kids you don't have? And so I think it starts there, and someone has to change it. And so like, I really try hard to do things that feed my soul and to stay focused on myself. And I know that sounds selfish, but it's like, I mean, what feeds my soul is to serve others, but still, like, I'm the most important person in my life, like more important than my husband, more important than my kids. But I wasn't raised that way. I was raised to think you have to give, you have to serve, you have to take care of everyone else. But if I don't take care of me, I can't be that model of how my kids should take care of themselves. So I think that's part. I mean, society totally feeds into it. All of the stuff I see now, it's like gross to me. Like, change your body, change your looks, you have to look this way. And it just grosses me out. But I also keep my focus very narrow, because I'm like, that stuff is just a bunch of chatter that, again, empower myself, focus on myself, keep myself firm so that I can be that guide for my children. That's kind of where I keep my focus. So
that's amazing. I know it's an interesting thing that you brought the whole self-love thing up, because I remember when I was going to therapy, trying to figure out how to leave my marriage, because I didn't know how to do that. And I can remember the therapist saying, like, you have to think about yourself, like you have to love you first. And I remember looking at her point blank and going, that's the most selfish thing I've ever heard anybody say. Why on earth would I love me? I hate me. Like I don't think I should love me, right? Because like I've brought I've brought my kids into this environment. This is all, and it was such a foreign concept to me. And it's something I had to learn, from the years that came from that. But that's such an important thing. And I think that because in some ways, some of us may have grown up thinking like, and it wasn't anything my parents did. I think it was something I put on myself of, well, I can't love me, because if I love me, I'm a selfish human. And I love other people so much. I just want to keep pouring out into them. And you can't do that when you don't love and value and respect yourself. And how can you expect anyone to treat you that way if you don't have that for yourself? So
it totally starts with ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's such an important thing. So yeah, that's great perspective and so important, so important. Now let's like fast forward a little bit. So you're happy in your home and everything. Was it because of the surgery and that's how you kind of fell back in, and then one thing led to another, or was there something like were you not fully accepting of who you were at that point, or what were you kind of dealing with?
So I think that's a good question. Um, you know, as long as I can remember, up until this point in my life, I really felt like I needed to accomplish something and I think that especially after my 20s, it was like, I need to prove myself because I failed. I need to prove myself. And so I was just almost addicted to doing more instead of just knowing who I was. And so that led me to just be busy and always taking on more. And then when, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't getting up in the morning. I didn't have a morning routine. I wasn't meditating. There was nothing for myself. I was running a business and running the kids and taking care of everything. But then when I had the back surgery, the drugs just gave me what I needed to keep going, in my mind. I'm like, I need to keep going. I need to keep going. I can do that if I just use these. And so it was just a perfect storm. It really was, like now I had an injury. I mean, I was so scared of having an injury when I got home, and I had it.
Sure.
Oh, because I just know what drugs do to me. And I had an injury. I tore my hamstring right off my bone. It was just the worst injury. Yeah. That paramedics had to come. And I said, please don't give me drugs. Please don't give me drugs. They had to give me drugs anyway. But what I knew was that, and what I know about myself is that I have an amazing future. I have a purpose on this earth. I have so much to fight for. Instead of seeing, like, well, I can keep going on drugs, I see drugs as the thing that could stop me from everything I'm on this earth to do. And I don't think I have to build a bigger business or accomplish more to become who I'm. In fact, I think that's like not even anything in comparison to who I am and what I'll accomplish. It's not about the money or the accomplishments of the business. It's about the connections. It's about, there's so many beautiful things in my life, and they're simple, but they mean so much more than all of those things. So, I think I was misguided. I didn't know my worth, and I was weak. And when I fell, again, when I have an injury and my brain tells me that those pills are what I'm supposed to take now, I know better. Like I know who I am. So I can say, yeah, not even. What you're offering me is this in comparison to everything that I'm capable of becoming. So
Wow, that's awesome. And what a like mind shift for you to come out and feel such a different way. What about like while you're in prison, and again, you could have stayed in that woe is me, my life sucks, this is awful, and just continued down that life. Like what gave you hope? Like what gave you the strength to keep going?
well, I think, the for me, the biggest shift was coming to know who I am. And this, to each person, that comes a different way. It took me a lot of time in meditation and in prayer. Like I remember early on, I was so broken when I walked into prison, just devastated. I mean, there's 1,000 women wearing khaki. I didn't think I could do it for a week, let alone 7 years, which I served 4.5 because I got good time and everything else. But still, that's a long time. And
It's a really long time.
yeah, and it just blew my mind. And so I remember getting on my knees, and whether you pray or not, for me, it was like, and this was my prayer, like, God, I feel like nobody. I'm nobody to anybody. I am a total failure. I am in a deep hole. I'm not a mother. I'm not a wife. I'm not a friend. I'm no one to anybody. I need to know who I am to you. And I felt this incredible amount of love, like more love than I've ever experienced in my life. And I'm in my worst moment in a jumpsuit in a prison cell. And all of a
Right.
sudden I thought to myself, I never needed a man. I never needed a man. I just needed to know who
Right.
I am. And I could see that I had an important purpose, and I could see how valuable everyone else in prison was too. I was like, whoa, and that was a real shift for me. Now, I had 4.5 years to do, but knowing who you are will get you through your darkest days when you know what you have to fight for, when you believe you're of value, when you know you have a purpose. So as I continued, and there were lots of dark days and lots of discouragement, I kept fighting because I believed I had a purpose and I knew I had value. And that was something not everyone had. And I think when you know that about yourself, you're able to see it in others, and it helps them rise to that too. Because I used to,
Yeah.
I would say, the world is cheering us on, you guys. We have to, like we'd be in a group and
Yeah.
they'd be like, what are you talking about? Nobody's cheering us on. I'm like, yes,
Right.
we have to keep going.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And
Oh,
now
that's
I just
awesome.
know that. And I came home knowing it, and people have cheered me on. But I think that shift for me of knowing my worth and believing that everyone wanted me to succeed, it kept me accountable. It's like, I can't quit. I have to keep going, And so
Yeah.
I try to do that. I mean, when I have friends that are struggling, like, the world is cheering you on. You have such an important purpose. But until they know it, like when you know it, it's like, oh, yeah, you can get through hard stuff when you know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a saying, but the way I've always thought of it is until you know who you are, at least remember whose you are, because
Right.
that helps shift the way you think. And um, it's just such a huge deal. And we don't talk about it enough. And I stress this all the time that you really do have to do that, that soul searching and figure out who you are, because without it, you just
Yeah.
there isn't hope. And that you speaking of feeling hopeless and not having value or worth, like just tug at my heartstrings, because I know what it feels like to feel that way about myself. And I know there's so many other people out there who feel that way. And you don't have to stay there. Like there is hope, and you do have value, and you have worth, and you were created for a purpose and born for greatness. And
Yep.
it's just such an important message that we get out there. And to hear your story in the way that you've come to believe this about yourself and know it, like you don't just believe it, you know it.
Right.
And that's just absolutely phenomenal. So
Thank you.
I'm so inspired by you. It's amazing. It really, truly is.
Well, I feel like I'm probably the biggest sinner on the planet who's made the most mistakes. And if there's any message, it's just that you can make mistakes and still have an amazing life. Like there's still a beauty. In fact, through walking through those mistakes, maybe your greatest purpose lies in overcoming them. So,
Oh, so beautifully said. And I think that while, you're stating, because I can see someone saying, well, easy for you to say because you got out of prison. But if you have a life sentence, or there's, what hope do I have? But you found joy.
yep. It's interesting you say that, because I had that exact situation come up. So I was speaking
Mm,
in a men's prison, and I shared my story, and there were, I had men were kind of clapping and cheering, and then a guy raised his hand and he said, "But I'm doing life. So what do you have to say for me? Like that worked great for you. You had something to look forward to, but I'm doing life." And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Well, I would do the exact same thing that I did." I said, because you can find a meaningful life in here. You can still serve. You can still live a life of integrity. You can still become the best version of yourself. Well, then I was driving home, and all of a sudden I started getting frustrated. And I thought, doesn't he think we're all doing life? We're all doing life. We all have a life
right.
sentence. I work with people that have like real struggles with mental health or going through a divorce. There's people in other countries starving. Every one of us is given challenges, and how we choose to deal with those challenges is going to define our future. And I thought, hey, wait, no, you don't have to pay rent, and your food is taken care of. You get to read all you want. I mean, there's pros and cons to this, because I found a lot of joy in there. So I don't know. I just think we're all doing life. So regardless of whether you're doing it in prison or out here, it isn't circumstantial. It's who you become in that process that will determine your happiness and the course of your life. So
that's amazing. So I could ask you questions all day, but I will wrap it up with, what is the one thing, if somebody wants to kind of go through that, process of learning to love themselves, what's like your suggestion? How can you start that journey?
yeah, I think you really have to figure out who you are. For me, that came in humility and honesty. Who you are doesn't have anything to do with what you've done. It's like you're this amazing person, but owning what you've done gives you the power to move past what you've done. But I believe that figuring out who you are, and however you need to do that, for me, that comes through this absolute connection to my God, my higher power. Like, I know who I am to him. I'm married. I've been married 25 years. I love my husband, but he does not come first, not even close. I do. And my heavenly Father come first, then my husband and my kids, and he knows that. Yeah. And so, like, figure out who you are, and whatever that takes. I mean, it's a different journey for each person. For me, it took a lot of time, a lot of prayer, a lot of humility. And it took asking in my weakest moment, like asking, who am I to you? And now I know. I think that's the most important thing. I have parents that will say, what can we do for our kids? And I say, you need to figure out who you are. That's what you can do for your kids. Like, I know they're going through something hard, but you need to know who you are, because when you know who you are, you can deal with about anything else, so.
That is so true. Well, thank you again for joining me. I truly appreciate it. You have such an inspiring story. Please, please go check out her book. If people want to contact you, how can they reach you?
Well, I'm really active on social media, on Facebook. I run a large Facebook group as well, but I think PortiaLouder.com. I have a website there, but Portia Louder on Facebook, Portia Louder story. And I will respond if people send me messages, because I get people that reach out all over the country with family members in prison, and I write letters to people all over the country. So reach out if I can help in any way, because it's my passion. I love it. So yeah.
That is awesome. You are certainly an inspiration and proof that there is hope in your dark days. And I love it. So
thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you. And remember that you are awesome and you are born for greatness.